Imagine this. You wake up one morning, and while you were sleeping, scrolling, even stressing about bills, your money quietly earned more money for you. Same paycheck, same effort, same you. The only thing that changed was when and where you stashed a pretty normal amount of money. And because of that one choice, your future looks completely different. That's the power of compound interest. You've already heard that compound interest can quietly reshape your future. But here's where it gets wild. It doesn't really care how big your starting number looks. It cares how long you leave it alone. Think of it less like a lottery win and more like a backstage crew. Every night they're in there, moving lights, building sets, adjusting props. The audience doesn't see them working, but over time, that empty stage turns into a full production. Now, most people treat their money like a phone battery. They're constantly checking it, worrying about it, trying to recharge it whenever it looks low. Compounding works more like a slow cooker. You add steady ingredients, you set the temperature, and then you resist the urge to lift the lid every 5 minutes. The magic isn't in constant tinkering. The magic is in giving time, enough time, to do its thing. In this episode, we're going to stress test that idea with real-life situations you might recognize. We'll look at what happens if you start late, what happens if you have to pause, what happens when markets dip, and what happens if you feel like, I can only spare a little. As we go, you'll see where the math is flexible, and where it's absolutely stubborn and refuses to bend. Here's the surprising part. Compounding is less about being good with money, and more about setting up a simple system that quietly works in the background. Think of it like putting a playlist on loop. You press play once, and the music keeps going, whether you're paying attention or not. But there is a twist. Those tiny choices you make today, how often you add money, how you react when the market wobbles, whether you stay calm or panic, those little choices can tilt the entire soundtrack of your future. So in this next stretch, we're going to zoom in on those tiny levers. How often you add money, what you do when things get bumpy, and why doing nothing can sometimes beat bold, flashy moves. Here's the strange, slightly annoying truth. Compounding often looks the least impressive right at the moment when you need the most faith in it. At the beginning, your progress feels painfully ordinary. You put in $100. Maybe you see $3 of growth. $3, that barely buys a coffee. And this is where most people shrug and say, "What's the point?" Then they walk away, right before the good part was about to start. So let's make this visual. Picture you're building a brick wall. 1 brick a day. For weeks it looks like nothing, just this low, awkward line on the ground. You're putting in the effort, but it barely looks like progress. But if you keep stacking those bricks, something changes. At some point you stop seeing individual bricks, and you start seeing a wall. Compounding works the same way. It's boring, 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 and then suddenly it's obvious. And that suddenly? That's just the math finally getting loud enough for you to notice. Here's a helpful way to think about it. You can split your compounding journey into 2 phases. Phase 1. You carry the weight. In this stage, most of your progress comes from what you put in. Your deposits, your habits, your consistency. You're doing the heavy lifting. If you stop here, your money doesn't disappear. It won't collapse, but it also doesn't get the chance to really take off. Phase 2. Your money carries you. Eventually, the growth from your existing balance starts to rival or even beat what you're adding. That's the tipping point. It's like pushing a stalled car. At first, it's excruciating. You lean in, you strain, nothing seems to move. Then it starts to budge, and a few seconds later it's rolling, and now you're mostly just steering. Compounding is that moment when the car starts rolling. Here's another way to picture it. Think about a playlist that auto-adds 1 new song every week based on what you already liked. At first, It's just your original songs plus a few extras. No big deal. But after a while, most of what's playing are tracks you never chose directly. Songs the system added for you. You're still benefiting. You're still enjoying it. But now, the growth of that playlist isn't really coming from what you add. It's coming from what the system keeps adding on top. That's compounding. It's financial auto-add. You set the vibe, but over time the playlist starts building itself. And this is why long stretches of nothing dramatic happening are secretly powerful. A quiet decade where you just keep contributing and don't panic sell can beat a chaotic decade of jumping in and out, chasing every hot trend, trying to time the perfect moment. You don't need perfect years, you just need enough average years stacked together. So the next time your numbers look small or slow, don't ask, "Is this worth it yet?" A much better question is, am I still giving compounding a chance to reach the part where it starts doing the heavy lifting? Let's bring in one more picture here. Think of 3 people standing on 3 different escalators. Person 1 sprints up a stopped escalator. Tons of effort. They do gain some height, but every step comes from them. Person 2 walks slowly on a moving escalator. Less effort. They're still rising because the system itself is helping them up. Person 3, they're on the longest moving escalator. They barely move. They just stand there. And yet they end up the highest simply because their ride was longer. That third escalator is time, with compounding turned on. Or zoom in even closer with a different example. Imagine a group chat where every person you add invites one more friend each week. At first, it's just you and a few people you added directly. Then something flips. The invites your friends are sending start to dwarf your own. Your original effort still matters. You started it, but now the growth you unlocked matters even more. Compounding is basically that. It's getting yourself onto the longest escalator you can, and then letting the auto-invites from your past decisions do more and more of the talking while you just keep showing up. Now let's talk about something a lot of people worry about: starting late. Compounding changes how we think about late starts. Even if you feel behind, each choice you make now still plants a tiny helper that works while you sleep. It's like scheduling emails to send themselves for years. You type them once, and then they go out over and over without you lifting a finger. You can't rewrite yesterday. You can't go back in time and start at 18 or 25 if you're listening to this later in life. But you can stack quiet advantages today. The real risk isn't being late. The real risk is staying casual about systems that run in the background, systems that quietly tilt the future toward the people who bothered to set them up. Now, let's be honest, compounding won't solve everything. Life still throws curveballs. Layoffs happen, emergencies pop up, kids get sick, cars break down. But when you treat compounding like a quiet co-worker on the night shift, the whole game changes. You're not the only one clocked in anymore. Each small automated choice you make is like preloading future you's backpack. So when the trail gets steep, you're not starting from empty. Alright, let's land this with something practical. Here's your action plan for this week. Step 1. Capture the idea. Take a few minutes to write down the key things you learned about compound interest, this 8th wonder. When you write it down in your own words, you're much more likely to remember it and actually use it. Step 2. Make it personal. Identify one specific area of your life where this applies right now. Maybe it's a retirement account. Maybe it's a savings app. Maybe it's paying down a high-interest credit card so interest stops working against you. Step 3. Take one tiny action. Do one small thing this week to put compounding on your side. Set up an automatic transfer. Increase a contribution by a few dollars. Open the account you've been putting off. Even a tiny step counts, because it gets you onto that moving escalator. If you do just those 3 steps, you've already turned this episode from interesting information into real progress. So, here's what we covered today in plain language. First, compound interest is like a backstage crew or a slow cooker. Once you set it up, the real magic comes from giving it time, not from constantly poking at it. Second, the early phase is where you carry the weight. Your deposits and your habits matter most at the start. But if you stick with it long enough, you hit that tipping point where your money begins to carry you. Third, long, boring stretches are secretly powerful. The quiet years where you simply keep going can beat the dramatic years where you're jumping in and out and trying to outsmart the system. Fourth, time is your longest escalator. Whether you start early or feel like you're late, getting on and staying on is what lets those auto-invites from your past decisions compound in your favor. And finally, you don't need a perfect plan. You just need a simple system, a bit of patience, and one small action you're willing to repeat. You now understand that compound interest isn't just a math concept. It's a quiet teammate that works while you sleep. Your job is to invite that teammate into your life. Set up the system once, keep showing up with small, steady contributions, and give time enough time to work. Let that sink in for a second. Because once you do that, you're not just hoping your future will be better. You're building it, quietly, in the background, every single day.